So let's just say I found a property, again, just high level numbers because, it's I'm a beginner. Simple math is good, and then I can kind of adjust it later. But we've gone over the basic formulas. I have a calculator open right now as well. If you could just run me through how to calculate my wholesale offer price using this, because it seems straightforward. Once we get down to lines maybe 25, I'm just like, oh gosh, what is this? So if you could just run me through how to calculate your wholesale offer price using the deal calculator, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So this deal calculator is something that we use pretty much every day in our investing business. So I always like to start with the end in mind on a calculator like this. So So again, guys, if you don't have the deal calculator yet, go ahead and click the link in the description so that you can get a copy of our deal calculator so that you can use it in your wholesaling and investing business, and you can follow along and really just get the most out of this. So I like to, again, start with the end in mind. That's the after repair value. So think of that as hey, you're selling something, right? At the end of the day, you're a fix and flipper and you want to sell something. So what's that total gross proceeds? What's the maximum amount of dollars you're going to receive from this property? That's what the after repair value is. So again, it's just the price of the property that someone's going to pay for on the market once it's fixed up and sold. And so that's really at the bottom of the calculator, but I always like to start there, right? Yeah, start with the end in mind, because that's really the most important number. Because if you can't get your ARV, then that's going to change the math on everything else in the deal.
Got it.
So if you guys need help calculating your after repair value, you really need to understand real estate comps. And so check out our other video on how to calculate the market value of a property using real estate comps. We go in detail so that you can make sure you're calculating your wholesale price very correctly and accurately. So check out that video if you guys need help on using real estate comps to figure out your ARV. So once you've plugged in your ARV, so in this example, let's just call it $200,000 as an ARV. So you can kind of plug it into the deal calculator. Then next, you're going to want to plug in your repair costs, right? Your rehab estimate. So this is something that, again, you want to dial in as closely as possible. I would say it's a little bit less important than the after repair value itself, because if you talk to 3 different contractors on the same property, on the same scope of work, you might get 3 different repair costs. So you want to plug in your repair costs here. So in this example, let's call it $25,000. And again, guys, we have a video on how to estimate repair costs. So if you guys want to check that out, we'll leave the link in the description so that you can estimate rehab costs like a pro. From there, you can plug in what kind of wholesale fee you're looking to make on this opportunity. So Tim, how much do you want to make on this deal?
We always aim for 10,000. So I'm just let's plug in 10,000 now. If we have to adjust it later, which I will probably ask you why, we can do that. Let's start at 10,000. Okay, perfect.
Great. So we've got, again, 200,000 ARV. We've got 25,000 in repairs and a $10,000 wholesale fee. Now we're going to plug in the holding costs. So property taxes, we're going to just ballpark this deal is going to be about $2,500 per year. So we're going to input that in the yellow cell. And then insurance, I like to ballpark, let's just say $150 per month. So you'd put $150 in that cell. Utilities, I ballpark about $100 a month. And of course, there are ways to get even more dialed in. Property taxes, you can just simply look up the property tax rate in your area, multiply it by your purchase price, which we'll get to in a second. And then that'll determine what your property taxes are going to be after you purchase the property.
Sorry to pause you, but I was looking on Redfin at a property. There was a tax section. Is that pretty accurate, you would say? For this section in the calculator, the property taxes?
It's a good starting point.
Got it.
However, a lot of areas, a lot of counties will actually reassess the assessor's value, the appraised value of the property after a property is sold. So a lot of those tax numbers on Redfin are what the current tax rate is, which if the seller bought the property, 20 years ago, then those are going to be artificially low depending on where you live. So there are some counties that tax amount actually goes up in proportion to what the market value is. But in most cases, or a lot of cases, the tax rate will actually just stay very similar and just maybe creep up, 1% a year or a very nominal amount.
Got it.
So
okay.
I think that's a great point, Tim, because a lot of flippers, a lot of wholesalers, like some investors, if they haven't been full cycle on a flip and they haven't bought property, they might run into an issue where they're using the old tax number and it might be artificially low. But then when they buy the property, that thing will get reassessed and their property tax might go up by 5-10x.
Right.
Because now the value has gone up significantly since the prior owner originally bought it maybe in the 80s.
Got it.
So, if you're in a high property tax area like, I don't know, California or Texas, that can be tens of thousands of dollars a year depending on the purchase price.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's a good starting point, but not, entirely accurate.
Yeah. I would just look up what's the tax rate in your area, property tax rate. You can simply Google it, ChatGPT, and then multiply your new purchase price by that number.
Right. Right. And then on the insurance line, is that like homeowners insurance?
Yeah, it's when you're rehabbing a property, it's a little bit different of an insurance policy. It's like a under construction, vacant property type of policy. So it's usually a little bit higher. But I know some flippers who just get a regular homeowners policy and call it a day.
Okay.
That's just a ballpark. I've seen anywhere from $100 to $300 a month. So again, it's kind of like on the value of the property typically makes a difference on how much you're paying in insurance. So again, this is just a ballpark. The best way to get the accurate number is talk to an insurance rep, and generally you can get a quote within 24 to 48 hours. So, and again, guys, we're looking at all these numbers because we're looking through the lens of the end buyer. We're looking through the lens of who are we wholesaling this property to? It's probably a fix and flipper in this case.
And they're looking at all of these.
Exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So again, some flippers, they might say, hey, I buy 70% minus ARV. That's really back of the napkin math. But if you're going to be doing a project, in our fix and flip business, we always use a deal calculator just like this. So you can really get down to the dollar on what this property is going to produce, what our return is going to be. So again, that 70% rule is really just a quick, number. You can just run it on your phone real quick.
Yeah.
And but it's still it still will matter if you have your ARV and your repairs correct. Because if you don't have those correct, even the 70% rule is going to land you somewhere that is not going to really be very accurate or helpful.
I mean, this already has so much more than that rule has in it, so obviously I'm using this.
For sure. And it has you thinking like an investor, right? Because most wholesalers don't want to be wholesalers forever.
Right.
They want to be able to fix and flip. They eventually want to roll those profits into buy and hold properties so that they can have long-term assets that will just snowball into serious wealth.
Yeah.
So this, again, has you thinking like an investor. Now you're asking great questions, Tim, and I'm proud of you for doing that. And so again, just keep going through here. Utilities costs. Cool. So the next line is HOA fees. So most properties are not in an HOA, but a lot of them are. So again, this is like condos, townhouses, or if your single family home is in a gated community, for example, or even not a gated community, just in a homeowners association, there's monthly fees. Sometimes they're quarterly fees. So you would put the monthly fee in this box. And then with all that being said, there's also closing costs underneath that. We ballpark 1%. But if you're in an area, like let's say you have a very low purchase price, you're probably going to want to bump that up to maybe 2% or 3%.
2%.
So as you transact in your market, maybe talk to a title company, talk to an escrow company, try to understand what the average closing costs are in your market so you can really dial that number in. But 1% is a ballpark for a cash transaction.
For the HOA fee part, what's a good ballpark for that section?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, they vary so much from $30 a month, $50 a month to I've seen $1,500 per month for some HOAs.
Wow.
Like if you're in a high-end area with a lot of amenities, especially these new luxury developments that are popping up, those are going to have some hefty HOA fees. So there's really no ballparking that. It's very easy to find that out. So if you're pursuing a property, you can just simply ask the listing agent, ask the seller, and you can plug in the actual number there.
Okay.
But
Cool.
If you want to plug in $300, you can just to have something there. And if there's no HOA, then that's an extra cushion on your deal.
Yeah,
so
nice.
Never hurts to have a little extra wiggle room in your budget. So once you have all of those numbers plugged in, then I like to go up to projected hold time of the property. So how long is this property going to take to purchase, fix up, relist on the market, and then close with a new buyer? So I like to look at the rehab budget and then determine how long is that rehab realistically going to take. So a good rule of thumb for everybody out there is for every $10,000 of repairs needed on a property, that's about 1 week of construction time.
Okay.
So in this case, we have $25,000 budgeted for repairs. Then I would estimate about like 2.5, let's call it 3 weeks for the repairs budget or for the repairs timeline. So assuming we get started on that immediately, that's 3 weeks. We can put it on the market. Let's call that 1 month total to rehab it and put it back on the market. And let's say there's 30 days on the market, that's another month. And then let's say we get a buyer under contract in that month, and that buyer takes another 30 days to close on the property. So that's about a 3-month project, which for this size of rehab is very doable. So then we can put 3 months in there for projected hold time. So once we have a projected hold time inputted into this calculator, that's going to automatically calculate the actual property tax number, the actual insurance costs, utilities costs, and then if we had an HOA, it'll actually calculate that cost based on the number of months that we've actually held the property, right? The hold time for the project, because the property tax amount, we put in the annual rate, because that's typically when you're getting property tax info, it shows you the annual number, like what's the property tax rate for the whole year. So our calculator factors in what's the precise number that you're actually going to be liable for as the owner of this property for only 3, 4, 6 months, however long the project takes.
Got it.
So based on that, we can now see what are the total costs and fees involved. In this case, it's about $36,000, a little bit more than that. And so these are all the important numbers that we're going to need to ultimately determine our wholesale offer price. So now let's actually massage this number to figure out what's a good purchase price for the property. So let's just say we wanted to start at, $150,000, right? If this thing is worth $200,000, in our example earlier, we said, hey, a 20% discount from the ARV would equal about $160,000. That did not factor in repairs. That did not factor in the wholesale fee. So let's just call it $150,000. So if we scroll down to the bottom, now that we've plugged in all of our numbers, we can now see what the deal net profit is in this deal. So it's worth noting that once we have a purchase price in this spreadsheet, this basically, just to recap, we've got $150,000 as our purchase price. Again, just our initial number to test it out. Let's say it's listed for $150,000. So we plug in the list price just to see if it works at list price. We've got a 3-month hold time. There's a $10,000 wholesale fee on top of this. So our cash buyer would basically be paying $160,000 for this property. We need to put in $25,000 in repairs. We've got some holding costs. We have some closing costs on the acquisition. And so all in, all that added together is $187,000 and some change. So almost $188,000. So this is called our total investment. This means this is the purchase, the rehab, and our holding costs and the wholesale fee. So all in, this investor is going to be in at, let's call it $188,000 for a property that's worth $200,000.
Right.
So that's a very, very thin margin. And you might think, oh, okay, well, there's $12,000 of profit, but not so fast. So we have what's called sales costs. So if you want to put that property on the market and sell it, then you're going to need to hire a listing agent, right? Most likely, unless you're able to find a buyer off market and do a deal directly with that buyer, then you're going to hire a real estate broker to list the property. And you're probably also going to be paying a buyer's broker to bring a willing and able buyer to buy the property. So that's why we have a section in this calculator called sales costs, which account for the listing broker commission, the buyer broker commission, and there's going to be closing costs on the resale of the property, right? There might be transfer taxes. There's going to be title insurance involved. There's going to be, fees, notary fees, et cetera. So there's about anywhere from 6 to 8% of sales costs involved. Most of that being real estate agent commissions, but there can be taxes and other closing costs involved to get the deal done. So that $200,000 now will have to be reduced by about 5 to 8%, sometimes more or less than that. But in this case, our numbers, we've got 1.5% budgeted for the listing broker. So in our case, that's $3,000 paid to the listing broker. We have 2.5% reserved for the buyer's broker. That's $5,000. And another 1% reserve for closing costs. So total sales costs are $10,000. So right off the top, that only, that takes 200 down to 190. And what's left in profit if we've spent 188,000 to get to that point?
Yeah.
There's $2,000 of profit.
Not a lot. Yeah.
So I like to make a lot more than $2,000 in 3 months of doing a project, right? I don't think anyone would think that's worth it.
Right. So
it's not only the deal net profit dollars, it's also, we look at the deal ROI. So someone might say, oh yeah, like $2,000 is great. Why wouldn't you want to do that? It's still profit. But if you have to spend $188,000, you're putting that at risk to make $2,000. That's not a very good return on investment. So that's why we have what's called the deal ROI. And so that is simply a formula that is taking the total net profit on the deal, which in this case was a little over $2,000, divided by our total investment on the deal. So it's kind of like a profit margin in this fix and flip deal. So in this case, it's only a little bit over 1% of profit margin.
Yeah.
So you can get, right now, you can get more of a return on your money if you just put your money in a high yield savings account that's paying 4%.
Yeah.
So why would you take the risk of buying a property, working with contractors, and then reselling and doing all this work to make 1% on your money? It's probably not worth it. So here's where we massage the numbers. This is how we actually calculate our wholesale offer price. So, and this is extremely important to know, what's your buyer's criteria, right? What deal ROI is your buyer looking for? What profit margin is your cash buyer looking for? And what are the total net profit dollars that they're going to need to make, at least as a minimum, in order for them to say yes to a deal?
Right. So like, that's why it's so important to like nail that down or confirm it from them, because now we just massage it until we reach those numbers, and then that's golden pretty much,
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. So now let's just say, so this comes down to talking to cash buyers, right? You want to understand what's the minimum net profit that you're looking to make on a fix and flip. What's that deal ROI minimum that you're looking for?
Right.
I've wholesaled dozens of deals to a buyer who their minimum criteria was $25,000 of net profit per deal and a 15% deal ROI. So it had to check both of those boxes. And so if we wanted to meet that criteria, then we could offer at a certain rate. And if we had another buyer who said, I need to make 20% deal ROI and $35,000 of net profit, we can offer a different price, right? We'd have to offer a lower price. So this is why it's so important to know your buyer's criteria and know that the more aggressive your buyer is willing to be on their fix and flip deals, right? The lower profit margin your buyer is willing to take, the lower profit dollars they're willing to take on a deal, the more aggressive and more competitive your offers as a wholesaler are going to be, because you're not trying to swing for the fences and hit a home run on every deal.
Right.
So let's just see if we wanted to analyze this for a $25,000 net profit and a 15% ROI. What would our offer price be? Why don't you tell me, Tim, what would that price be based on these numbers?
So the deal ROI at 15, you said?
Yes. 15% deal ROI minimum and $25,000 of net profit in the deal. Okay. All right. I'll help you out. If you guys know in the comments, let us know. If you can tell me, based on the numbers that we went through today in this example, what is that purchase price that we would need to make a minimum of $25,000 in net profit and a 15% deal ROI. So let's figure that out together now. So if we went from $150,000 purchase price to $140,000 purchase price, that gets us to about $12,000 in deal net profit and a 6.8% deal ROI. So that's not quite good enough, is it, Tim? So if we go to $130,000 in purchase price, all else being the same, now this deal is producing $22,000 in net profit and a 13.3% deal ROI. So we're close. We're very close, right? They might be tempted to take the deal, but if they have a very strict criteria, they might just say no right off the bat and say, hey, I need a better price. So at this point, this is called massaging the numbers. This is how we structure our offer to make it the most competitive, really down to the dollar of knowing that our buyer is going to be willing to take it and how high can we offer. So let's go down to 120 and see where we're at. So now if we offered 120 on this property, all else being the same, this is going to produce a $32,425 deal net profit for us here and a 20.58% deal ROI. So bingo, we would definitely have a deal with my buyer. He would take this all day.
Got it. I see why now you started with the ARV first, right? And then now we're massaging purchase price of the property in that cell, and then that adjusts everything in the deal ROI section to get to that 20%. That's the, yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, let's say, hey, we made our offer at 120 and the seller's like, no way, I need more than that. So now we can either increase our purchase price of the property, we can double check our rehab numbers, or we can even massage our wholesale fees. So now let's see what's our maximum allowable offer, right? We know 120 works, right? 100 would work, of course, but what's our maximum allowable offer? So at 125, we're at a $27,000 net profit. So at 127, we're at a $25,000 net profit and some change, and a 15.4% deal ROI. So really, that's our maximum allowable offer on this deal is about $127,000. And so that's where I'd feel comfortable maxing out our offer at. So of course, you could offer more if you're willing to lower your wholesale fee. So you could go as high as $132,000 in purchase price if you charged a $5,000 wholesale fee. So there is a little bit of wiggle room if you're willing to be flexible to get the deal done. It's better to have 100% of something than
nothing.
No. Yeah.
0% of nothing. Yeah.
So it's better to make something than ultimately nothing on a deal. So it's, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's better to make $1,000, better to make $5,000 than nothing at all and losing the deal to somebody else. So
be on the lookout for the next video in this series. And if you want to build a hyper-profitable wholesaling and flipping business, then check out my full in-depth training at realestateskills.com/watch. See you there, and happy wholesaling.